at it again!
Hello everyone. So I want to talk about the fact that I'm doing quite a lot of rereads at the moment, and I didn't really reread by habit much until recently when I've been doing these projects for BookTube. So I've been doing the BookTube thing for a couple of years now, so it's kind of inevitable that you'll be thinking about what you used to love. And this comes up sometimes in tags when people, there might be a prompt that says something like, what book have you loved all your life, or what author do you like a lot, or those kind of things. So, we do talk about those kind of things, important books, important authors for us personally. But rereading stuff is something that I didn't do a lot of. I did it sometimes, and there's some, I'm going to mention a few things that I have reread a lot. But it's definitely with this idea that I want to do a deeper dive into authors and try and figure out who my favourites are and where they rank is definitely something that I'm doing on my channel. So just kind of to give you some context, I'm doing the Ray Bradbury deep dive, so I'm trying to read everything I can by Ray Bradbury, which includes buying the things that are in the gaps. And I had some stuff for Christmas. I had a lot of his books anyway, so I did an initial announcement of the Ray Bradbury project a few months ago, probably about 5 months ago, 6 months ago. So I only started it in January, and I'm in my second book, so I'm taking it deliberately slowly so it doesn't stress me out. But both of those first two books are books I hadn't read before, although I had read a couple of the stories because they're short story books, but they'd appeared later on in later books. But I'm really excited about the Ray Bradbury thing, and I love the fact that I'm rereading this stuff, or a lot of it. I mean, Something Wicked This Way Comes, I reread it again for like the fourth time last Halloween, but I am going to reread it again within the context of all this other Bradbury stuff I'm reading, but I won't get to that until at least the end of the year, if not beginning of next year, because I'm trying to read it in order. So the Ray Bradbury stuff is really cool, and there's a little bit of nostalgia in now, and I'm expecting to like the stuff I'm reading, so I know that when I pick up a Ray Bradbury book, I'm likely to like it. So there's that comfort in picking something that you know you're going to like, rather than an author you don't know, or a book that you don't know what it's going to be like, and it might take you 50 pages to get into it, or those kind of things. So there's definitely that element of security that you know you're going to like it. So that's true for the Ray Bradbury thing. I did a video recently where I talked about the Fritz Leiber Pfeffer and Grey Mauser books. So I don't want to reread those. What I'd like to do with those books, I need to get the seventh book, which is actually the fourth book. The fourth book in the series is the one out of the seven I haven't got. So I do want to reread those, and what I'd like to do with those books is to rank them. So do a video where I rank my favourites, and that's going to be interesting because they're all short stories, so I need to rate them. It could be there's one book which I really like one story and not so keen on another story, so that'll be an interesting challenge to do. But that's something I want to do, and I've said before when I've done my Harlan Ellison stuff that I want to reread Harlan Ellison stuff as well. Recently, Mark A. Vaughan did a video about Richard Matheson, and that reinforced my plan to tackle Richard Matheson in a deep dive way after Ray Bradbury. So those two, Ray Bradbury and Richard Matheson, are two people I often say are my favourite authors. So Richard Matheson and Ray Bradbury. So after I've done the Ray Bradbury thing, I want to read everything I can of Richard Matheson. I haven't got many gaps with him either, so I haven't got his Westerns books, and I haven't got there was a crime book I didn't have, but I've got most of the other books. So I do need to make sure I've got the right books, but I definitely want to read Richard Matheson stuff, probably start that in about 18 months' time or something. But again, that will be rereading stuff. Almost all of it I'll be rereading. And again, it will be just to confirm in my head that he's either my favourite or my second favourite or whatever. And to see which ones I like the most. And it could be that I might even do a thing where I think I talk about, I might even rank the books, I don't know. But what I'm hoping to do with the Ray Bradbury one, by the way, is to, once I've done a couple of books, do them a couple at a time. For most of them. I mean, Fahrenheit 451, I'd like to do a special video just on that. But yeah, in a lot of ways, do that. When I reread Martian Chronicles, I might do one on just on the Martian Chronicles. I'm not sure, but yeah. So those two authors are very important to me, and the reread thing is something I'm really looking forward to. and there's a little bit of nostalgia in the sense that I'm expecting that I'm going to like everything that I read, even with the gaps. So there's a nice feeling when you pick up that book that you're going back to the past in the sense because you're going back to an old author. But I do want to figure out, I'd like to read the stuff that's not quite so known or not quite so celebrated to see if I like it as much, because that's possibly the case. So we'll see. And I was going to reread the Hull Edison stuff, and the Hull Edison stuff is a bit different. So I'm a different person now, and I'm a little bit more aware of, well, I just might have a different attitude politically to some of the stuff that's in Hull Edison stuff, I'm not sure. But again, that would be an interesting reread for me because I'm such a different person than I was then. So that's an interesting way to reread something to find out if you do feel differently. And that's also a big part of why I want to reread Charles Bukowski's stuff. So Charles Bukowski was a very important author to me. I briefly mentioned why in another video. I won't talk about it too much, but it was he was quite an impactful author when I was having proper trouble in my teenage years, and he kind of brought me out of it in a really weird, kind of twisted way. So that's I'll always remember that. That'll always be important. But as far as the actual content of his books and how I feel about him as a writer, I'd just be interested to know how I feel like that in my 50s. So that's going to be something I'll be doing as well. As well as, I really think it's important to keep discovering new authors, filling in some gaps from the past, and discovering as many new authors as you can and new books as you can. I do think that's really important. So I do try and do that. But yeah, these little projects I put on this channel, some of that is about rereading. So I just wanted to kind of talk about the fact that the psychology of rereading is different to finding a new book and a new author and discovering if you like it or not. And it's clearly safer. You're not at risk of reading something and not liking it, but it's also worthwhile and different because you might not get the same from it that you did when you first read it, and you might not even like it as much as you did. You're not likely to hate it if you liked it as a kid. But the other thing that I've already announced that I'm going to reread again is The Belgariad by David Eddings. And that's slightly different because that'll be a bigger project in a sense, because I'll probably want to read it all at once and not have too many gaps in it. So it's like one big story that I'd like to reread. So it's 5 books. And from what I remember, Enchanter's Endgame is a lot bigger than the others. But I read them when I was really young. So I read them when I was about 15, 16. And that's also when I read Lord of the Rings. But I've reread Lord of the Rings since then. But I haven't read The Belgariad since then. And I've been getting really nice copies recently. I've had all of the books in the past, but a couple of them got a bit knackered. So I've got newer copies of those. So I am going to read The Belgariad again. And what I'm expecting is to really enjoy it and to love the characterization and to like really get involved in the characters and the story, the way they interact with each other. But because I do remember it was written really well, and what you loved about it was how much you cared about the characters in it more than the kind of quest aspect of it, which wasn't necessarily groundbreaking. So that's in my plans to reread The Belgariad. I don't know when I'll get there, especially as I'm going to do it when I know that I won't want to interrupt it with other books, because I could put a few books in between, but I don't want 2 big gaps. I mean, when I read The Blade itself, I could have gone straight on to the next book, and I do feel like I've forgotten a lot of the content of The Blade itself, and that was a year ago. So it's not, for me, it's good to try and keep going on a series if you can. And to be fair, I've got to keep careful of things like Dresden Files as well, because I've got to make sure I remember all the characters in that and not leave too many big gaps. Because I like the Dresden Files books, and I've only read 2 of them. I've read 4 of the Rivers of London books, and again, I don't want to forget the characters. So for me, these things are quite important to keep going, because if you leave it too long, I forget details. So when I do read The Belgariad, reread The Belgariad, it'll be because I've got that stretch of time that I know I'm not going to forget the characters so much. I mean, I think Bulgarian has an advantage that it'll be reminding me of characters, which I think is in there somewhere anyway. So, yeah, so there's various things I'm planning to reread, and I'm really looking forward to it. And some things I'm already rereading, which is great. But I do think the process of rereading is different to reading something new. And in some ways, it's more exciting when it's brand new and you can get into a new author, or it's a book that was blowing you away and maybe you've never heard of it, or not that many people are talking about it. And but there's also that safety when you do reread something that you're quite confident you're going to like it again. So I do get why people reread a lot, and I'm looking forward to that aspect of rereading for me. I mean, recently I've discovered Adam Roberts, so that's an author that I think I'm going to really like. But that's just really exciting. It was a new author. As far as and like looking at graphic novels as well, I really enjoyed Percy Gloom. I don't know if I'm going to do a video on it. I've already mentioned it in my monthly roundup, but I really enjoyed it, and it was really different. I didn't know what to expect, didn't know what was going to happen in the story, and that was because it was brand new for me. So I do think it can be more exciting if you really like it and it's really new. So you don't get in the same way, you don't get that excitement in the same way, but you can be excited about returning to something that you did love as well. So yeah, it's different, but still cool. So I don't know how you feel about the reread thing, and if there's anything that I've talked about that you're particularly keen for me to reread, or you think there's something similar that I should be reading if I haven't mentioned it, then please mention it in the comments. One thing I haven't talked about on my channel yet, because I don't know when it's going to happen, but I am intending to reread Dune as well. So I read that when I was a teenager. I haven't reread it since. And I remember a fair amount about it, but I'm going to reread Dune at some point. But again, I want to be in a place where it'll probably take me a month to read Dune. So I want to make sure that I've got that time to do it properly. So anyway, yeah, I don't want to do a video on rereading because I'm doing so much of it, or at least a lot more than I used to. And I'm just curious to know what you thought about rereading. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching as always. Please comment below. Thanks, bye.
Of what it's like to be you. Sit up on your